Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure humulite. Trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest humulite reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth humulite. Learn more from mine to market by visiting blackearth.com.
You're listening to Ruminating with RealAg, the podcast that chews on the latest in beef production, with your host, Amber Bell.
I'm Amber Bell, and this is Ruminating with RealAg. For today's episode, we're going to be speaking electric fencing. Now, there is nobody better to speak about electric fencing than producers and ranchers that are on the ground using it day to day. So we're going to be doing a bit of a roundtable session. We've brought in Arron Nerbas of Nerbas Brothers Farms in Manitoba, Mike Swidersky of Riverview Ranch Meat Company in Ontario, and Donovan Kitt of the Homestead in Alberta. Now, each of them run very different styles of operations, different types of livestock, and have a lot to say about different types of fencing. So I hope you get a lot out of this conversation. Listen in. So welcome, fellas. It is fantastic to have you guys here. Just to get us kind of started off, why don't you guys introduce yourselves, and maybe we'll start with you, Mike, because you're at the top of my screen here. Just sort of talk about what you do, who you are, where you're based. Yeah, give us a brief intro.
Yeah, I'm Mike Swidersky. I come from the township of Melanchthon in Ontario. About an hour and 15 minutes north of the airport in Toronto. Kind of a cool area here from from southern Ontario. We're in the highlands, so we're elevation and is kind of our limiting factor. A good portion of the rivers start in our area, so we're flat, but we're quite a bit cooler and windier than most of the rest of the area. I myself and my wife and our two adult children, we have background yearlings, and I manage the local community pasture, the Grey Duffin Community Pasture, which is a yearling community pasture as well, and we also have a flock of sheep that are out on pasture all year as well.
That's great. So a lot of electric fencing.
Yeah,
That's
there's
what I'm
a
hearing.
lot of electric fencing and a lot of sort of moving parts between the species and whether it's perennial pasture or cover crops that we graze as well.
Fantastic. And Arron, we'll move to you next. Give us a brief intro.
Sure. Arron Nerbas. I'm from Shawmouth, Manitoba. So basically, we're right in the middle of the prairies, and we're just a few miles from the Saskatchewan border. And so we have a cow-calf operation, about 500-ish cows, pairs. And we also sell breeding stock, some bulls, some heifers. We also do a little direct-to-consumer marketing of beef. We recently opened up a small retail shop in our small town of Russell, a local town. And yeah, so it's myself and my brother are the main partners now, and my parents are also still involved in the operation. So there's 3 households there. And yeah, as far as climate and topography, yeah, we're all perennial, so we don't crop anything. So anything is either grass or hay or multi-purpose. And yeah, do a lot of like managed grazing. Took a holistic management course in 2005. So we're about 20 years into that journey. And yeah, I'd say the single biggest thing, that we benefited from in our operation is the land management through managed grazing, and electric fencing is a huge part of that.
You almost can't do it without electric fencing, I would say.
No,
It'd be really hard to.
No, you can't. Unless, the only other way is to go back to a herdsman.
Right.
That's it, right? So, which we're not prepared to do. So,
Oh, yeah, labor's really expensive here in Canada. Donovan, you are up next. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Donovan Kitt, and I farm on the very kind of western border between Alberta and BC. So we're just on the Alberta side, west of Grand Prairie, Alberta. And it's myself, my wife, our 3 boys, and my dad. And we raise Galloway beef, Berkshire pork. We do a bunch of pastured broilers, eggs, and we have about 3 acres of market garden as well. So all of that we direct market, most of it in the Grand Prairie area, some in Edmonton, and about half the pigs we sell into Vancouver.
It's busy. It's a lot. I think for
Yeah.
every one of you guys, it's really busy. So let's kind of talk about that because there's not a whole lot of people on your farms. There's not a lot of labor. And I think that's one of the big qualities to electric fencing. It allows to kind of stretch out that labor portion of farming that we have. So can you guys kind of speak to that a little bit and just the benefits and what the electric fencing on your places look like?
So I'll start out, I guess. So on our place, we started out grazing yearling cattle. So we started out with 3-strand high tensile fence on our perimeters, and then we got sheep. So the sheep aren't too hard to keep in, but the guard dogs are. So we just basically added some extra wires so that we can keep the sheep and the guard dogs in all year, not just when there's lots of feed in front of them, but when we're, there's poor grass in the spring and we're just housing them outside. One thing, we don't have neighbors with stock, so we don't have to keep other stock out. It's just keeping our own stock in. So we basically have perimeter fences, and then we cross fence them with turbo wire if it's cattle, and sheep netting if it's sheep. So very simple system. Cedar posts, which do grow here in Ontario. Our posts do have to be a little more substantial than the guys in the West. We have 8-foot posts and 9-foot on our corners. Otherwise, they will come right out of the ground after the first winter. So we have to just put a little bigger infrastructure. But that's just part of the landscape here.
How much land are you running the sheep on?
Well, we would run, like, with the cost of whether it's rented land or owned land, we need to run sheep on all the land we run cattle with in order to keep our economics the best. So we've seen as big of increase in our production or profit with sheep and cattle together as we did with cattle and rotational grazing. So it is a absolute game changer, and it takes a little bit more labor, but so there's cattle and sheep on about 1,000 acres here, and then we would run sheep on about another 300 or 400 acres of cover crop in the fall, which helps us extend the grazing season on our yearlings quite a bit. It's our sheep are disposable, are the disposable part of our herder flock.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
I can't wait to get into some of like the actual logistics of all this. So looking forward to this. Okay, fellas, what do you think? Donovan or Arron? Who wants to go next?
I can if we're in the same rotation. So our place is we have about 4,500 acres of grazing and haylands. It's mostly in one block, but we do have some satellite pastures as well. So our perimeter fence is also barbed wire. So it's just stuff that was put in when my dad was younger, and 3 or 4 strand, and we've maintained it. And I like a perimeter barbed wire fence. I think if we ever pulled them out, we would just go with a 2-strand electric, but we'll keep maintaining them, and they're good. So when we first started, a form of rotational grazing, we just started cross fencing with a single high tensile and just splitting things up. And we basically, got to the point where we were over 100 paddocks with different, not just one management group, but multiple. And basically got to the point where we were 80-acre paddocks. And since then, we've just used temporary fencing to split those further if we choose to. but we're basically on, we just try and avoid the second bite basically. So we're on, 2 to 4 day moves, generally speaking.
And that's all throughout the season?
On calving, we sacrifice a bit and we don't move as quick just because of the logistics with, and pairing and calves. So we do sacrifice. We're pretty conscientious to always change our calving pastures, so we're not in the same place every year. So we like to change that up. And I think disruption and changing patterns is a huge part of proper rotational grazing and land management as well.
Right.
So was there anything else to that question?
I think that's it for now. We'll be diving into some of the other details on that. But yeah, let's start with that. And then Donovan, how about yourself?
Yeah, so we have, at one point my dad had bison, so most of our perimeter fences are like 6-strand high tensile. We only keep 1 strand hot because now it's pretty much cows. Then we have some 2-strand high tensile just to split up some fields, and then we run just polywire, and the size of those areas are dependent on the season and what we're seeing for grass. For the pigs, we use fiberglass posts because we need to always be adjusting the height of the wire. Typically in the summer, there's 2 hot wires. In the winter, just because of the snow and the pigs get insulated, we'll make one of those a ground wire, and we'll keep them pretty close together. So if they touch one, they're getting a good ground as well. We use flock net for our laying hens, so they're always kind of scooting around the farm. The shelters are movable. And then for our meat birds, we have our pens just have a netting over them, and then we have a kind of a perimeter hot wire around each pen, just for kind of a wildlife deterrent. And I guess we also fence off our gardens too, just to keep the dogs out because they love to run and dig and things like that. So we have a couple wires that go around the gardens.
I'm thinking I have to do that with my dogs right away here. They're brats. So how do you guys decide between wood, steel, fiberglass posts? So Donovan, you kind of mentioned that a little bit, but yeah, how do you guys decide on what type of post you're going to use?
So I noticed we're west of us, or just bordering us, is a lot of grazing lease. We also have grazing lease too, and I just kind of watched the posts there, and it's the original Tamarack posts seem to be, those are the ones that are still standing, still holding wire. And then over the years, I've seen them, like the pressure treated posts, rot out, break. So what we've started doing is we've been harvesting Tamarack. There's been lots of fires around us in the last number of years, and so the fires have kind of burnt all the branches off these Tamarack trees. And so we're able to just go out, harvest them, peel them, sharpen them, and that's kind of what we're using right now for replacement posts are the Tamarack posts. So we've been using that for as our pressure treated posts break. For our pigs, instead of the fiberglass post, the price just seems to be going up on those. Like they used to be like $2 each. Now they're like $7 for the same thing. But what we've found is we've started using driveway markers. And so they're like a little bit thinner, a little bit taller. So like they're a 5-foot post instead of a 4-foot post. But we're getting those sometimes you can get them on sale for $2 a post. And wow. The insulators will fit on those. They're a little bit taller. They're orange. They have some a little reflective strip on the top. And so for about a third the price, we're pretty much achieving the same thing. And those are nice too, because we do some 3D fencing for deer and things like that to keep them out of our bales. And so because they're a taller post, then we can get that 3D fence higher.
Right. Do you find the 3D fencing works really well?
Up until this year, it worked perfect.
What happened this year?
I think I'm not sure what it is. I think it's the fires, and it's just been so dry. Like we haven't really had pressure from elk. Like we haven't seen elk in this area at all up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And mostly they've left us alone. Like we've got a lot of grazing land and a lot of forested area. So like we don't do any sort of predator control. And so we kind of feel that there's kind of a natural cycle. Like we don't mess with them and they don't mess with us. But I think it's just it's been so dry. There's nothing out there for them to eat really. So now they're starting to look for the easier meal, and so yeah, the 3D fencing's worked great up until this year, and now just ordered 27 freestanding panels, 8 feet high, that will keep around our stacks, and so it's going to really affect our bale grazing, because up until recently we've been able to lay out all of our bales in the fall, and now we'll lay out like maybe 2 weeks at a time. We'll have to keep the rest fenced off.
That's fantastic. And Mike or Arron, what do you guys think? How do you decide on posts and such?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, so we mostly use pressure treated wood. That's what we have been using. We haven't done a lot of fencing with like permanent posts in quite some time. Most of the fencing changes and stuff we do now is just with temporary. But on our sandier, lighter land, 3 to 4 inch posts seem to work quite fine with and wide distance between. We've also not tightened our electric wire like we did when we first started. We used to make it fiddle string tight, and it's just not necessary. Your anchors come out. It's not friendly for wildlife, and it's just not necessary. A little sag in the wire is a good thing. It's not, the tightness isn't what keeps the cattle in anyways. It's the voltage. So anyway, on some of our other land that's not as light, we'll use some bigger wood posts. We've used steel T-posts before too, but not very often, just where we need to in low areas or really kind of extreme rugged kind of country. So that's pretty much what we've been doing. We haven't tried fiberglass or plastic. I think I don't know, accessibility and cost, I guess, would be the main reasons. But one thing in recent years is, I don't know where you guys are, but here a lot of fences have been pulled due to land going into grain production. And if you just watch Facebook Marketplace or otherwise, you can get a lot of posts fairly cheaply that are really not that old. So that's a good place to find posts.
Right, I found the steel posts. They'll be okay for a little while, but then as soon as there's a big storm or anything, you're just asking to have your fence shored out. Something will happen to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're a ground rod, right? So if you don't have insulated properly, they just become a ground.
Right. And then what about step-in posts? Do you have any favorites?
Yeah, we mostly use Gallagher pigtails for the most part. I mean, they're reasonably priced. They just work good. They're reliable. And the only thing that usually breaks down is when it's your fault and you leave the wire in the pigtail and it rubs out, right? Due to heat. So that's usually not the pigtail's fault, but that's pretty much what we've used. We've used some like plastic ones in the past, but in winter they're garbage. They just break and crack. I don't really like the ring top posts personally. I like the pigtails.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And we never use more than a single wire for electric. Right. I mean, I can see where 2 wires on perimeter fence is a benefit, but
do you have a problem with calves with that? With single wire?
Yeah, but who cares? I mean, if they want to go under the wire, they generally don't go too far.
Right.
And they'll come back. Mom makes noise, and it's not a big deal. So
right. For sure.
I think if a single wire doesn't work for cattle, it's because they're not trained properly or because you don't have enough voltage. But it's 1 wire is more than enough for cattle. Can't speak for other species though.
Pigs, we do 1 wire and they do pretty well. How about yourself, Mike?
Yeah, we've gone to using cedar posts. There was a time where I was able to buy used ginseng cedar posts, and they were used for ginseng production, and then I was able to buy them for $2, but now I'm generally buying new stuff. So there is still split rail cedars kicking around here on cedar rail fences that was used here by the first settlers in the 1850s. So this cedar, if it's you can keep it almost wet, it'll last for years. Now on the posts, they'll rot off at the ground level. over time. I would say I generally space mine. We're pretty flat here, so I'm generally my perimeter posts would be 50 to 60 feet apart. Um, I come from the same school as Arron that they don't have to be tight. You know, on those cross fences, yeah, as long as the wire is high enough that nothing steps over it or goes through it, that's how I stretch my cross fencing. And I guess as far as plastic, like cross fencing posts, I've been using the Gallagher plastic ones, the white plastic ones, and the reason I have them is that if I can use them for sheep if I need to, but I use them for the visibility and training the stock. So I'm 100% yearling, so I get a new training cohort every year, and that training, I have a pretty specific system where I will put them close together, actually use two strands and for that one first night, and I can train a group of up to 400 steers in one night on electric fence. So day two, they're on this stretched out single wire cross fencing, and in that process I'll put a reel in the corner as well, and they'll learn what electric fence is overnight, and it seems to work pretty good.
Do you use any ribbon or pop cans or anything on the wire to
No, I
help out?
think that visibility of that post is the key rather than the 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 ribbon or the pop can.
Hmm.
That's what I've found anyway, is that if you can give them a barrier that'll make them stop, then they'll lick that post and they'll lick that poly wire, and they'll be trained pretty quick.
I wish my pigs would train nearly as fast.
Yeah, set them up for failure and they'll learn.
Well, daily they'll go up and they'll scratch their head on the electric wire, and they get
Yes.
zapped, but daily they go and scratch on it to see if it's still hot. And what do you guys, how do you guys make the decisions on fencers? So whether it be like the charger, are you going with solar, battery, plug-in? How do you decide on size? What are we looking at for that?
What I do is I buy the biggest fencer they make. And I guess if you can go with one that plugs in, go with one that plugs in. I do have a number of solar fencers that I do use on cover crops and on some remote pastures. Um, all my chargers, I guess it started back when you could buy one of those Speed Right 36,000s. The competition to those, they only last, if you talk to anybody, they only lasted a couple years. So, but those 36,000s, they're 20 plus years old and they're still cracking. So I've got a number of those, and we don't have a great dealer network for them here, but all you have to do is be able to buy them, in my opinion. You don't have to worry about fixing them. They just keep snapping and snapping.
Which is what you want, the reliability.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything he said. Uh, Bigger is better. You can't have too much power. And always, if you're thinking about what you need, go a little bit higher. Um, and plugging in is obviously the most reliable for sure. We have a 36 dual speed, right? And I don't know how old it is, probably close to 20 years old, and she's still going. And that's our main hub, right? So that's from our main headquarters. And then we electrify everything outwards from that. Everything's not always connected, because if you connect everything, then you have more power and you just have a little bit less voltage on your line. So yeah, that's what we do. And then for remote pastures and for cross fencing, we use poly wire as much as we can as well, but we use a lot of the Range Ward products. We were a customer of Range Ward products since 2014, and then I became a dealer about 3 years ago. And right now we've got 3 power grazers and 2 razor grazers in use pretty much all the time at our place somewhere. So they're very, very flexible and functional units that are basically self-contained fencing units that come with the battery, the panel, the solar controller, the energizer all in one unit. So they're very handy.
I'm on the board of directors for a forage organization in my area, and we just got a razor grazer. And looking at it, I was like, this is crazy. Like, you just have everything all in one unit, super easy to move around. So that's got to make life a lot easier.
Yeah, and they all come with that bigger rope too. And like the thinner poly wire has its place for sure for some of the more temporary, shorter spans and things like that. But we really like the rope. It's a visual barrier for them as well. Not only, just the electric, but it's a visual thing for them as well because it's just bigger and it doesn't break. It stretches out quite a bit where poly will break. So it has quite a few advantages. And that's why we like the pigtails too, because the rope fits in it nicely. The rope doesn't work that good in those plastic posts because it's just too big.
Right. Do you guys find one of the benefits to the pigtails is the fact that you can roll it up kind of while it's still hot, not have to touch it a lot, the wire?
I'm not following you. What do you mean exactly? Sorry.
Well, I'm thinking the plastic posts that have the tabs that you put in, right?
Yeah.
The pigtails, it's really nice because you can roll it up, and often, like if you have, depending on the handle you have, it'll actually roll right through the pigtails.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore. We've ruined too many pigtails just
Oh,
with friction burn. So what we do when we take down a fence is we go along and take the wire out of the pigtails and then we roll up just the wire.
right, right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And Donovan, how about yourself?
Yeah, we also run the speed or StayFix, I guess they're Speed Right Now energizers, and we find that I don't know if they're the best bang for the buck. And yeah, we have one, I would say 30 years old or so, and that's our main fencer, and we've never had to do anything to it. I have a couple of battery powered ones just for kind of more remote areas and just so we can be a little bit more portable. I think that's the StayFix. I think it's 13,000. And but I find like StayFix or Speed Right, those are the energizers that we use. Posts and components, mostly Gallagher. So I like the ring top posts because we're using just the thinner poly wire. And then we always make sure to you can get the red or the white poly wire, and we always get the red just because there's the contrast in the winter between the wire and the snow. Yeah, there's those Zammer handles I really like.
Love those.
Yeah, so it gives you the option to make that hot or not, and yeah, so we always replace the handles with those.
Let's talk a little bit about handles. What have you guys tried? What's worked really well? What's really annoying?
I guess I'll go. We've used those black handled ones. I don't know. I think they're Speed Right. We used to buy them from a dealer locally here a long time ago, but he's not a dealer anymore, but we still have them. They work well. They're spring loaded somewhat. We've used the Gallagher ones too with the spring in them, the orange plastic ones. We use some Zammer handles. I don't know. I wouldn't say any of them are absolute garbage, or they're all just a little bit different. But we try and use, we use a lot of risers when we're moving cattle too, so it just kind of eliminates gates, which is really, really nice. Just putting the wire up to 7 feet on a post and letting cattle go underneath it. Then you can do it wherever you want. So that's really, really nice. I had another thought there, but don't know where it went. So somebody else can
Do you
go.
find when you're raising the wire on the cattle that they have a harder time going through, like knowing that there was a wire there and possibly seeing it?
No, not after they're trained. Once they know the drill, you put that wire up and they know. I mean, if you've got a new group and you're trying to train them, yeah. But like with our cattle and training, we really don't bring in outside cattle. So I mean, it's just from birth they're in the system, and yeah, exactly. Oh, I know what I was going to say. As far as tying off and things like that with insulators, I we used to be so kind of, we'd worry about everything being absolutely insulated, but I mean, older wood posts do not really conduct. So, I mean, we just tie off on a post. I mean, when it rains, yeah, you might get a little voltage loss, but not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So
I use as few handles as I can. I guess on the reel side, I just mostly use just the Gallagher ones. I have a buy a pile of them every year, so when I lose them, I can just grab another one. But I would use as very few handles. I use risers as well. And I'd rather just drive over the fence with my quad rather than get out and open gates wherever I can. Um, but yeah, that'd be for the most part. I try to eliminate them if I can, but use the same one everywhere. Otherwise, yeah.
And then do you tie directly off as well, or do you tend to use insulators on everything?
I would use insulators because here I would use good insulators. I use sort of they used to be called Gallagher W's. I think they're called just wood post insulators now. That's what I think what they call them. And I use screw nails for them rather than staples. That way, if the snow load catches them, the snow load breaks the screw nail and doesn't break the insulator. So then you just put a new screw in it in the spring. We had 5 feet of snow everywhere this year, so there was about the most fence damage I've seen in 20 some years. Um, I think I even replaced 500 insulators and with our ice storm, I put 8 liters of chain oil and almost 20 liters of gas through a chainsaw this year.
Oh my goodness.
Um, that's not a normal thing, but yeah, I feel like a bit of an athlete right now. But that's just probably 1 in 10 year uh, uh, weather event that we had this past year. Uh, but yeah, the screw nails and the good insulators. If we don't use good insulators, even the tube type, you'll hear them snapping in the spring. So that's and even for the most part, I tie off. I won't go around a post with hot wire. I tie off because the engineering will lift those posts up no matter what you do. Whereas if you tie off on individual posts, you can take the power off sections you don't want, and you can keep those posts in the ground.
Mm, that's great. And how about you, Donovan?
For the gate handles, I always look at kind of the hook, and I like the ones that I think it's a Gallagher that have it's kind of flat instead of rounded, like the hook end, because I just feel like that makes a better contact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But we have a whole bunch. I'm not too fussy. I like the ones that have a big handle around them. So when you're opening up, like your hand doesn't slip and I feel you can get like a little bit more. You can get them a bit tighter when you're pulling on them there, and your hand's a little bit more protected. But gate handles, I'm not partial. I don't
Have a
have strong
preference.
opinions either way. Yeah.
Here I thought I was going to start a fight between you guys. Okay, and what about insulators, Donovan?
Insulators also, I'm not too fussy about. I prefer it's mostly color. Like the perimeter fence, we usually use like the Gallagher insulators. But for all of our poly posts or fiberglass posts, I just go by color. So either black or yellow. I think the yellows are Dare who makes those. And it's because inevitably they get popped off, and the yellow ones are easier to find. Um, the white ones, I don't know how many hundreds there are that have like popped off in the winter that are just gone
They're
forever.
gone. They
Yeah,
disappear.
yeah, and then the black ones, they're not too bad, but the yellow ones are easiest to spot, so that's why I like the yellow ones.
Right. And let's talk about corner posts because this is kind of a nightmare for a lot of people. Do you guys have any tricks that you use when it comes to awkward corners, awkward gates, anything like that? for putting posts, whether it be temporary or do you put a permanent post in? Um, yeah, I know I'll sometimes use two temporary posts and then angle it off a little bit better.
Yeah, we do that too with the temporary, just one in the ground, and then yeah, basically just an A anchor for temporary. Um, for us, like we just found like when we used to tighten the wire, it was just brutal on the anchors. Like every corner would be pulling out. And now that we've gone to just more of a slack system, it really takes all the strain off the corner posts. So, but we do use bigger posts on our corners and then we just use like a screw-in anchor and barbed wire wrapped around and tighten that way. And on the inside of the anchors, we usually just use those screw-in kind of eyelet ones where your wire is on the inside of the post and it just goes around a little plastic round insulator. And they work pretty good for taking some pretty good strain.
I would keep, like, as far as temporary fencing, I would keep a handful of pigtails in my stash. If I do have to go around a corner, I've got my pigtails for that. And as far as the permanent fences on those corners, I use a 9 foot cedar post and I thump it in till it's more in the ground than it is up top. And
That's
that,
not coming out.
well, it'll try, but yeah, so it's only 4.5 feet out of the ground, and I would tie off with sort of the white insulators. Like I would do a proper fencing knot, and pretty traditional on that thing. Everything's done the same, and I know it's gonna probably outlast me, hopefully.
Yeah, and for us, similar to us, we use pretty heavy posts in the corners, and then just spacing those corner posts out a bit. So when we have kind of that crosswire there, like it's a lot less than 45, like usually around 30 degrees or so. Then for our temporary posts, I have the ring top, and I can have one standing up, and then the other one there's enough gap that it'll slip through, and then I can kind of make a bit of a brace that way.
Mm,
So I have one standing up, and then the other ring top that's taking that strain. For
that's
the
handy.
pigs, yeah, for the pigs, what we do, because they're a little bit shorter posts, then we just double up in the corners.
Hmm. That makes sense. And then is there any one thing that you're like, man, I wish someone had told me this before I started using electric fence? Like for myself, it's probably the fact that honestly, it's probably easier to walk to the fencer, turn it off before trying to move pigtail posts than to try and move it live.
Oh, for sure. But the best invention ever is the remote for fencers. I
Right?
mean, without a doubt, that is the best invention. When you can be 2 or 3 miles away and turn off your main fencer with a remote, that's just beautiful.
Hmm.
I don't know, just don't tighten your wire as much, which I mentioned. Always go bigger in terms of voltage. Temporary is your friend because I mean I like having a set number of paddocks with high tensile, but temporary just gives you the ultimate flexibility to keep changing those paddocks in terms of size, um, densities and everything else. And like, yeah, temporary fencing is a beautiful thing.
I would say here, I have almost no temporary fence. I'm pretty much going to all perimeter. Now we're wide open spaces, like we'd be one yearling or yearling and a half per acre type stocking rate. We talk number of animals per acre here, not number of acres per animal, as you guys probably do in the West there. So yeah, I'm with my skills of handling livestock, I don't need feel I don't need cross fences, and that would have been a whole lot nicer if I never put any cross fences in and just left everything open. I guess something else I'm on my reels, I take all the stuff off when I get them, the guides, the all those wires for the clips. I don't use any of that. I power everything off the hook on the end of the fencer and don't like any of that other stuff that's on there. I find it gets caught on things or you pinch your finger. So I pretty much make my reels naked when as soon as if I get a new one and that's not I know that's not a real popular opinion amongst people. I think the guide is like trying to watch if you're round baling, watch the monitor the whole time so that you feed it evenly. Well, you figure it out. So that's just something I like to do, and I also like to keep a good stash of parts around as well. Have gears and hubs sitting here in case I happen to run something over.
I have to say, all those little bits and pieces that they come with now too drive me up the wall. I would way rather have just a very basic reel and not have to worry about all the different things. I don't know how many times with the guard handle on the Gallagher ones, I've been hit by it because by electricity because something fails in that guard and now suddenly the entire reel is electric and it's terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
oh, sorry. I just gonna say
go ahead.
I agree on the reels too. Simple's good. Those guides, as soon as you drop it once, they're toast. They just break. So it's better just not to have them. But geared reels are a beautiful thing too.
See, I
So
don't like the geared reel, and I don't know if it's because I'm a woman and they're a little bit heavier and a little more awkward to use, or I just haven't. I am stuck on like the way I did things before, and I'm like, oh, it's so much easier. I know exactly what I'm doing here, but I don't actually prefer the geared reels personally.
I'm a big fan of the geared reels. Like we used to always just get the ones just the basic ones, but I feel like you can wind up fence like 3 times as fast with the geared ones. And I that's one of the reasons I like the Gallagher ones too. Is the handle is probably like 2 inches longer.
Mm.
The speed rate ones, like it only covers half your hand, and then it's just really awkward to roll them up. We have a lot of people come and go through the farm, and those guides are I really like the guides because you'll get somebody out there to reel up a fence and they'll be gone all day because they've reeled up the whole, like all around the side of the reel, and like what's a half-hour job, like will take them half. Yeah, they're cutting wire off and that, so it makes it pretty foolproof having those guides. Yeah, I also find with the geared reel too, like you can get they roll up tighter than the other ones because you can, yeah, you're rolling it quite a bit faster than you can walk, so they stay tighter when you roll them back up.
yeah, I
That makes
think
sense.
we've all been there with the rat's nest in a reel. Everybody has, and it's just like when it happens, you're like, oh God.
Yeah, and I
Here
just
we
found
go
out you
again.
can buy the replacement guards, so I got a whole bunch of them. So
You could probably get them off the other guys.
yeah, maybe.
Get rid of
Yeah,
them.
No, they're broken and gone.
Uh, and any advice for keeping fences effective in wet, dry, or snowy conditions? We've kind of talked a little bit about it, but let's dive into that one.
so whenever we pound ground rods, we try and pound them into a low spot. So like there's always, um, and we always have on our perimeter fences, like the bottom wire is always a ground. So we can always, if it's really dry, like we can just hook directly onto that to have a ground. Um, and when it's snowy, like you mentioned with the pigs, is we'll have a ground wire and a hot wire pretty close together. Same with the cows too. I guess that would be one thing that um, that we switched over to a couple years ago. Is before with all of our bale grazing, like we were putting the posts in the ground, and it just, of course, the ground freezes and it gets harder and harder. Now we use those ring top posts and just stab them directly in the bale, and so it's always really easy. And then we can do, if it is really snowy and we find that the cows are pushing the wire a bit, then we'll do a second raw. We'll do a second row, and that'll be a ground too. So similar to the pigs, like they're getting a good shock when they touch that wire if they're insulated from the ground.
Perfect.
Yeah, we would be too wet more so than too dry. So a lot of it is being able to take some power off some bottom wires and take the power off the bottom wires, have good components, good grounds, and have a good fencer that'll pump through the wet grass and stuff. And I don't run cattle in the winter for the reason that it's our landscape really isn't suitable for big cattle in the winter, and we just run sheep in the winter, and sheep are pretty, if they're fed, they're pretty easy to keep in, and they really only go as far as their feed source. So things get, we get enough snow that just about everything is covered in the winter, and everything is pretty near on the honor system at some point. There's no ground left in the available, so that's kind of how our winter works.
Yeah, and for us, like, yeah, grounding's key for sure. So yeah, try and find lower areas, or we've also used like pouring water on a ground rod as well. That helps to get some moisture in there. I guess another thing is just don't electrify what you don't need to, just to keep your voltage on your main line as high as possible. We generally don't have wires too low. Like, I mean, I know when people have two wires and the bottom one will be low if they're electrifying both, it'll keep the green growth off. It'll snap and basically kill the growth. But we tend to not have, it's all single wire mostly, and it's, just kind of high hip height. So we don't really need to worry too much about that. And so if we unhook certain parts of the fence, it's not a big deal. So that's just another tip that we do quite routinely to make sure we got as much charge on the line as possible.
Okay, and let's talk about failures. Any major failure or learning moment throughout your guys' careers with electric fencing that you're like, man, I need to fix this? Story time here.
I would say here it's going with wraparound insulators and going around corners. Here we need to tie off, otherwise those corner posts pop up. Just that engineering push causes doesn't matter if that thing was in 12 feet deep, it would still go up over time. But so to tie off on those corners is sort of fundamental here. And then it's easy to, if you ever do have to replace H braces, it's pretty easy to do if you just, whereas if you were going around those corners, it's a bit of a bigger job to do that. That would be about the thing here.
That makes sense.
I can't think of anything significant in terms of failures. I guess I don't really like electric fencing in winter too much, to be honest. Years ago we'd corn graze and we would try, with the calves on, and calves would sneak under and tip the wire over and stuff. And then we went to like a 2-wire system with a ground and a live, and that worked well too. But if I can minimize my winter electric fencing, I will at any cost pretty much. In the summer grazing growth season, I mean, it's extremely valuable, but I try and limit it in winter, I suppose. And one of the other things was just kind of like when we first started, the first fences that we made were 3-strand electric. I have no idea why we did that. I guess it was just a recommendation by the local guy, but I mean, it's not necessary. And that bottom wire, if you're trying to electrify it, it's just too low and you're going to get voltage drop from vegetation. So that would be about it.
Great.
Yeah, for me, I think I just had mentioned it. It was instead of for the winter grazing is putting posts into bales rather than trying to get them into the ground. What we were having to do was drill kind of a pilot hole through the frost and then push them in that way, and it took a long time.
Yeah, in the bales would make it a lot easier. and quicker,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the next question here, I'll just say I just bought a fencer from Gallagher, and it's a small one. It's going around a tiny bush, but it's actually an integrated unit that uses, like, I have it on a rebar post, and that's using the ground. So the contact point, instead of having a wire that goes off onto the ground, you're actually directly against the charger, and I'm really loving it. It's really cool to have a self-contained unit that I can just clamp onto a post and it's ready to go, which is neat. But it wouldn't work to have a really deep ground, I don't think. You wouldn't be able to move it, it would completely waste it. But yeah, so that's just a little comment on that one.
Yeah, we've got a couple of those Gallagher. We call them suitcase fencers, of varying sizes. But they're. I mean, as long as you're not trying to electrify a large span, they work great.
Mm-hmm.
They got the solar panel built in. Just the batteries don't last very long, and you got to switch them fairly regularly. But they work great too.
They're tiny. I was surprised by how tiny and light they are. So looking ahead, is there anything that you guys are wanting to try out? Is there anything you're looking to improve, upgrade? What does the future look for your guys' farms?
I'll go. That's a good question. I think we're I don't know. It feels like we're nearing kind of maxed out on, I would call it, electric infrastructure. So I don't really think we need a lot more. I mean, you can always have a pallet full of extra pigtails because, as we all know, they disappear magically, right? It's like
They're like the
where's the
sock in the
pigtail?
dryer.
Yeah, or the 10 millimeter socket, right? I mean, it's just like where did they go? So you can never have too many pigtails. But I think we're kind of set up pretty good for fencing infrastructure.
For us, it's being worked on right now. As we've always had like a fencing shed, and everything just goes into the shed, like open the door and it gets chucked in, and it's a disaster in there. And it's this old wooden granary, and we just had a fire 6 kilometers from us, and so the whole area was evacuated and stuff, and so a lot of we cleaned out anything of value out of a lot of these sheds, and so right now this fencing shed is empty, and so before everything gets chucked back in, we're going to drilled some old pails on the wall, things like that, in order to keep everything upright, segregate the different types of posts. So I think we have, like, the infrastructure wise, we're pretty set, but now it's just keeping it organized. That's going to be the challenge going forward.
That's such a big thing.
And I guess for me going forward, we plan to continue to do the graze cover crops. That seems to be a pretty good local advantage here, that we're on our lambs on red clover. We can put feedlot type gains on the lambs on red clover in the fall, and then move on to oats and peas right up till late December. Another project they're working on, we're expanding our community pasture by 200 acres. So we've got some fencing infrastructure going in, and some water infrastructure, and it'll all be solar powered. So it's been close to 20 years since I bought any solar pumping infrastructure. So I think there's probably some that's a little better. So we've got actually a drilled well there that'll put out over 100 gallon per minute of beautiful water. So we probably have some type of combination solar system that'll run the fence charger as well as the well infrastructure. So it should be nice designing that project.
Water systems are a whole other topic, and that
Yes,
just
they
gave
are.
me
Yeah.
another idea for an episode, so that's great. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of Ruminating with RealAg. It's a completely different layout than our normal ones, and thank you guys for sharing your experiences.